Welcome to the March 7th, 2019 Planning Commission meeting. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please take roll.
Commissioner McBride?
Here.
Commissioner Slawinski?
Here.
Commissioner Smansky?
Here.
Commissioner Weiner?
Here.
Commissioner Yoder?
Here.
Commissioner Thomas? Chair Whitliff?
Yes. Thank you. Approval of agenda. At this time, the Planning Commission may approve the March 7th, 2019 meeting agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Bob, second by Mick. Any discussion? None? Please take roll.
Commissioner McBride?
Yes.
Commissioner Slawinski?
Yes.
Commissioner Smansky?
Yes.
Commissioner Weiner?
Yes.
Commissioner Yoder?
Yes.
Chair Whitliff?
Yes, thank you. Approval of minutes. This time, the Planning Commission could or may approve the February 14th, 2019 meeting minutes.
I'll make a motion, we approve the minutes as read.
I'll second it.
Motion by Marlene, second by Roger. Any discussion? None? Please take roll.
Commissioner McBride?
Yes.
Commissioner Slawinski?
Yes.
Commissioner Smansky?
Yes.
Commissioner Weiner?
Yes.
Commissioner Yoder?
Yes.
Chair Whitliff? Yes. Thank you. Before a public hearing, I want to welcome our newest member. I know it's on the agenda, but Pam Weiner, welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, welcome.
Public hearing, there is none today. Public comment on agenda-related items. I just want to read this before we start. All comments and handouts from the speaker at the podium will go through the chair. Also, there will not be any interaction between
Podium. In the audience.
No, that's the 20th. Oh, okay. Excuse me.
That's the one.
I'll start over.
2 weeks.
All comments and handouts from the speaker at the podium will go through the chair. Also, there will not be any interaction between the podium and audience. If these rules cannot be followed, the chair can terminate this portion of the meeting. Is there anybody that would like to comment on agenda-related items? If there is, please advance to the podium. Name and address, please.
On the agenda tonight is the apartments, correct?
Yes.
The Hillcrest Apartments?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Theodore Doty. I live at 112 Ford Street in the city of Manistee. I live right across the street from where the proposed project is going to be built. I hadn't seen any pictures of it or the site plans before I came here, but I looked at the plans tonight. And one of the questions I would have is the main in and out on Ford Street would be like right in front of my house by my driveway. Are those plans are correct, right? So a lot of people in our neighborhood are concerned about, one, the traffic, the increased traffic, what's going to happen. And the other one is that we've lived by Century Terrace for many years and we know what's gone on there. I guess over the years it's improving, but it was pretty bad at one time. And I spoke at the city council meeting when they had the planned, or the payment in lieu of taxes. I was at that one, and I had stood up and I talked at that time, and I asked, because we'd heard in the neighborhood that they're going to remodel Century Terrace, and they're gonna remodel all their properties that the Housing Commission owns. And my concern was at that time, when I came up to that meeting, was, are they gonna take these people and put them into this new apartments complex? That was my, and they kind of said no too, but my question is, my understanding is on with the Housing Commission is what they've done is changed the age, because when Century Terrace was first built, it was for, I don't know what the age is, 55 and over, 60 and over, whatever it was. But then they changed so younger people could get in there, and then a lot of problems started happening, and so my understanding is they've changed it back. But my question is, when their leases expired, these younger people, and their leases are no longer available and they have to leave there, where are they going? Are they going to this project, or where are they going to? This is our concern of people that live in the neighborhood.
No, go ahead.
The only point that I can address is that this project is not public housing, period. This is a private company who is building this housing, and they will end rent just like any other renter in Manistee. So you're gonna have to qualify to live there, you can basically just like getting any other lease in town. This is not public housing to any extent.
But if they can qualify to go into Century Terrace, they should be able to qualify to go into there, wouldn't they?
No.
No.
No, it's completely different. This is workforce housing. This is housing for people who are, basically have a regular job and are just finding a difficult place to rent within their means. So it's not public housing. It doesn't qualify under the public housing rules.
Because as I stated before, we've lived with Century Terrace
Right.
for many, many years, and we know what that's come to.
Yeah.
So
So, like I said, everyone that is, will have to, basically, they'll have to submit a request to live there, and they're gonna have to, basically, just like getting in any other commercial apartment, you have to show that you have a way of making your rent payment every month, and you have to make your rent payment. It's not coming through as a voucher or paid through the state.
I saw in the Manistee News Advocate article, it said there will be on-site management. But is that full-time management? Because a lot of times they go from office to office. And my understanding is they already have two buildings or two projects in the Manistee County area?
Yes.
They do.
Yes.
So would that manager, usually that manager is at, I believe, Reed's Park, it used to be, and they would cover Horizon Point. Is that same manager going to cover all three properties?
No. I would say that it's probably too difficult to do that. With 50 rental units, you're gonna need somebody on site all the time. But again, that would be a question for the developer.
Because if you have an on-site and they're there all the time, that's a whole different, as long as that manager keeps up on the apartments and that and controls everything, it's usually all right.
Yeah, they're gonna.
But if they're not, it gets out of hand.
There will be a public hearing on the 20th, so you
That's
can
the
address
reason I'm
those-
speaking today, and I saw that in the paper and I got a letter, but I'm not gonna be here on the 20th. That's why I'm up here speaking today.
Okay.
Other question I had, it said in the paper, City of Manistee zoning administrator said that the planned unit development application is complete. I understand that. And then it said, quote, "The review thus far is a zoning review and not a planning review." So what does that mean?
That is a question for Tamara.
So that's my quote? So
Well, that's the quote, the News Advocate.
and it's true, they took that off of the memo that I prepared for the planning commission. And that simply means that so I am the zoning administrator, that means I'm looking at the zoning ordinance, which lays out a number of items that the application needs to be complete. So was my task. But the city does not have on staff a planner that reviews other items in that capacity. The planning commission are the planners, and the work that they're going to do tonight and on the 20th is to provide the planning review. So they probably will talk.
That's what I'm trying to figure out,
Oh,
the difference
okay.
between the zoning and the planning, what's
Right.
going on.
Right, so the issue that you were talking about, traffic, some of those issues, the planners on the planning commission will review that part of the application. I verified that it was a complete application.
Okay, who
Okay.
approves the planned unit development then?
The
Okay,
planning commission.
That's planning commission?
Yep,
Okay,
yep.
okay. And I asked about the on-site management. Okay, the only other thing I want to say is I've heard all kinds of rumors for years about the property, and I haven't lived in Manistee all my life, but I've heard stories that there was a church there was a cemetery there, and different things about it. So the only reason I'm saying this is so that if somebody goes on there, starts excavating, that they don't, they treat people that are buried with respect. That's all I gotta say.
That site was the former Washington School. It was part of the Manistee School District.
Correct.
And for many years, they've done extensive excavating in there. There's nothing there other than what they had for the school. There used to be, years and years ago, a septic field in there. They took that out long ago, back in the early part of the century.
Okay,
Nothing was found in those times.
like I say, I've researched it. I've seen a plat map from 1875 in the city of Manistee. That whole block, Short Street to Ford Street, 3rd Street to 5th Avenue, or 3rd Avenue to 5th Avenue, that whole block in 1875 was called Catholic, it says Catholic Church Lot. And that was the site of the first St. Mary's Catholic Church in Manistee. They did have a church there, and they did have a cemetery there. That's facts. I'm trying to tell you. Okay? And I was told also that when they excavated to put in the footings and that, to build the school, that they found remains at that time. What they did with it, I don't know. So I'm just trying to tell you ahead of time.
Okay.
You don't want to see anybody's lost relatives disrespected or anything,
That's true.
Right.
Okay.
I didn't know that.
All set? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Gary Neeson, 296 10th Street. Obviously, we're not on the agenda.
You done?
You're on it.
You're on there.
Oh, we are on?
Yeah.
Under old business.
You're on page 2.
Okay. The mayor lied to me.
Olga Street.
He told me I wasn't on it.
Thank you for the comment.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Blame Rogers.
yeah.
Anyone else? Okay,
Don't blame me, Gary.
all right,
Go ahead.
we'll move along.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
Special presentations, there is none today. New business, discussion on the proposed amendment to Article 5, Section 514E, parking, bike parking and sidewalks. And discussion on the proposed Hillcrest PUD site plan. Tamara?
Want to explain that to us?
So the, I'm sorry, I'm looking in my packet for the proposed, thank you. The Tabernacle Church, as we have spoken before, are looking to amend their approved special land use permit to allow for pervious paving material in the parking lot. Specifically, the use of grass pavers. So I'm giving background, is that okay, Mark?
Yes, okay. all
Okay.
right.
The ordinance allows for this type of paving material. It's in the definitions, it's in a lot of different places that allows it. However, in the parking standards, it requires that the parking spots, the parking spaces, be painted. So that doesn't necessarily make sense to have to paint grass. Grass grows. They'd have to be painting it quite often. There are other ways that they could accomplish orderly parking in a parking lot. So the proposal that's in front of you would be to amend the zoning ordinance to allow the zoning administrator to work with an applicant to achieve orderly parking on a parking lot made of different types of material that doesn't necessarily allow for painting. It doesn't spell it out exactly. It allows for flexibility for the zoning administrator and for you, the planning commission, to work with an applicant to hear the newest, latest technologies that they may have to park in an orderly manner. So again, in the case of the Tabernacle, they had mentioned using a parking attendant, which they use in Buckley to quite some success. But then also these little,
Reflect?
like these like reflector, thank you, Roger, to kind of clip in to the ground, and it reflects, and it allows the orderly parking of cars. And then it fits with the grass growing, and it's no big deal. So, so that's in front of you. The language, George Saylor and I worked on it together. He actually recommended that as a very simple, clean way to fix the problem in the ordinance. I believe the process is that you guys review it, and maybe you could teach me, right, you approve it, you recommend it on to city council, we have a public hearing, which is set for March 20th, and then after the public hearing, you would send it to city council for 2 readings. So again, this tonight is just a discussion to introduce the language to you, to see what you think.
We've already accepted the fact that they're gonna do the green parking lot, haven't we?
Yes.
The grass parking lot. So as far as the marking of the streets or the spaces, I don't think we made a determination how specifically they should do it. We let them find their way, if that's whatever appropriate for grass.
The language, I think, still has it identifiable. They have to identify the parking spaces.
Yes.
We just don't tell them how.
Right,
We don't say that it has to be
Present us what it
painted.
is.
right.
Keep it something that we
Thank you,
approve of.
yes.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So the requirement stays pretty much the same. It's just that gives them more flexibility in, like I said, how if it's on grass, makes it a little tough to paint. Doesn't last long.
Yeah, it would.
Only to the next cutting.
That's true, yeah.
It could always even be somebody wanting to come along and just put posts in for each parking spot. That could be, instead of having painting and stuff.
Yeah,
Something
that's
that
true.
just identifies you park here. And that's the things we're looking
Now,
for.
they will have reflectors, or?
Well, so that was one of the solutions that they had talked to me about, is the reflectors.
And that is what we recommended back to them as well.
Yeah, yeah. So today, there's no action required, but I wanted to make sure that we had a discussion about it, and then on March 20th, when there's the public hearing, at that time, if you wanted to change the language, recommend something different to planning commission, there's nothing, you can do that, that's in your purview. What are you thinking about the language, though? I'm curious to know.
I think it pretty much makes sense to me.
Okay,
Now, one word from painted to approved gives us a lot of leeway and
Yeah.
latitude
Yeah.
to work with developers over the stuff.
very good.
Sounds like a good.
Marlene?
I agree.
Okay.
Agree.
Pam?
Okay,
I agree.
Okay.
okay, then.
Agreement? Yes.
Great, we'll be ready for the March 20th public hearing then.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. I agree.
We have to talk about the exit
Discuss.
also.
I would be more than happy to talk about that, and I do believe that we provided the minutes on the table
Yes.
for you.
Right.
So, if you would like to talk about that right now, that was not on the agenda because we did not, I didn't know you wanted to talk about it, but we can.
First Street, Main, yeah.
Well, now they want to exit.
I don't know what you want to talk about.
I defer to the commission on how they want to deal with that.
Well, I think we just wanted to just make sure everyone knew that
Yeah, that there was a change.
on the original plans, there was not an entrance and exit off of Hancock. On the
Yeah.
revised plan, there was an entrance off of Hancock, but our recommendation was that it not be an entrance, but only an exit.
Right.
That makes sense in the flow to not have people coming in two different directions, but it does help with the way the parking lot is lined up, and especially for drop-offs and deliveries, that they would be able to go through the parking lot and then exit out on Hancock.
Because they had to buy the adjoining property, because it was mandatory, they enter and exit off of First.
Off of First Street, because
Right.
it had to be on a main street.
Right.
But the secondary exit, I think, makes sense from the size of the parking lot is 117 cars.
Yeah.
And having more than one way in and out makes sense, especially it gives you some opportunities to make a right turn instead of a left, depending on where you have to go.
Was that brought up by the safety inspector when he checked it over? Was there any question from them?
So recall, I wasn't here when you guys did the original
Oh.
site plan approval for it, so I do not know what their recommendations at that time were for an entrance off of that, entrance and exit off of that particular road. But I do know that the approved site plan showed it closed. And then just to fill the rest of the commission in, I deemed that the changes to the approved special land use permit were minor. And that triggered the site plan review committee to meet, to look it over, to review it, and they did that on Monday. And when they did the review, they saw that that they had actually opened up the entrance and exit to, I'm sorry, what, the name of the road? Hancock, thank you, Hancock. So they caught that, and they came to a compromise and said, okay, keep the curb cut, but make it exit only.
Right.
So they're,
Have people pulling in, letting people off, and then traffic backing up
Right.
on the road. It'd be easier.
so that was not a recommendation, that was the requirement for the site plan now, for amending the special use permit. That site plan review committee has the authority to make those conditions. And I believe that you guys have on your table the conditions that they set,
Right.
and
Well, we'll go with that.
if there's any questions.
No,
yeah,
it's a nice change.
Okay,
Yeah, I think so.
okay.
Okay?
Thank you to the site plan review committee for taking care of that, working through the issues.
That's our
Thank you.
job, Chairman.
Second is discussion on the proposed Hillcrest PUD site plan.
So, Mr. Chairman, we do have the architect for the Hollander Development Corporation here.
Okay.
Just so that you guys are aware, if you did have any questions, Eric Marion, right? Yeah, so he's right there. Just so you know, if you have any questions, he's here to answer them.
One thing
For
I
you.
did notice on the plans, obviously, a lot of stuff was cut and paste for getting it so quick. You have a bunch of plantings that say Spruce Street instead of Ford. Yeah. So about maybe every second or third sheet, you're gonna see, you've got the development in Manistee, but you've got West Spruce Street instead of Ford Street, so that's just, I understand how fast you guys have to do this stuff. I've done that stuff myself before, so it's something you guys just might overlook in the proofreading. So some of it are in the headings, some are in the title blocks. It's just a minor thing, but
Thank you.
things happen.
So, oh, I'm sorry.
Excuse me. Does he speak then for the project?
Eric, do you speak for the project?
The Hollander project, right?
Yes, he should.
Yes, I'm the architect, I'm not
Oh.
the developer, so.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, you wouldn't know then about a nighttime manager or
I
full-time.
don't, I can follow up, and I think, he will probably be here on the 20th as
Oh.
well, but any questions that you have that I can't answer, I can certainly follow up and make
Oh,
sure that
okay.
we have the answers.
Tamara, what do you have to go through on this?
Yeah, so let me take you through it. We understood that the Hollander Development Corporation had an April 1st deadline, as we talked about before, to apply for MISTA credits. So from that April 1st deadline, Rob and I counted back and created a timeline that included the requirements, the Open Meetings Act requirements for public hearings and for notifications to residents. And we came up with a very aggressive timeline to get the work done. And I think that the Hollander Development team and the city's team, Rob, myself, the DPW director, fire, police, all of us have worked really hard. So I kind of am patting ourselves on the back because we worked really hard to meet that deadline. You guys have met. You're meeting on the 20th for a special meeting. So I just point that out because that's part of being development friendly and development ready, is being accountable, setting up that timeline, being accountable and sticking to it. And so we've really done that. There were a number of items through the first review that they addressed, and we've gone through a second review. And so what you're seeing tonight are the plans with the second review. There's very few items from a zoning perspective. Actually, there were no items from a zoning perspective that they needed to address. Very few from the DPW, from the engineer, fire, and police. And those issues they are going to take care of in time for the March, actually the final submission. There's so few. So from a zoning perspective, I feel it's very appropriate for you guys to be at the point where you can make a decision about the project.
Okay. Then architecturally speaking, we can't speak for that, so we had our team of engineers check this out.
So remember, our review team is Jeff McCullough, the DPW, Brent Haskins from Fire Marshal, Tim Gozel from the Safety, myself for zoning, and Sean Middleton from engineering. And they all provided reviews
Okay.
to be considered. It was submitted to the Hollander Development team. They addressed those issues, and you can see in here where, you know, there's a lot of yellow.
Right.
The site plans were changed. As a matter of fact, the site plans from when you first got them to now, you'll notice that there's differences, the layout of the project, and some of that had to occur because of the water system, some of the curb cuts, all the comments played together for what you see today.
Okay.
So tonight, we're just having a discussion. So if there's questions, Eric is here to answer them. And the site plan that you're looking at now is the same site plan that we'll be talking about at the public hearing.
Okay.
Just to manage expectations, it's not like they're going to go back, change the site plans and bring it back. It's going to be the same. So please bring this packet with you on the 20th.
Okay.
Now, when you got us this plans to look at, that's when I started digging through them. Because I'm by trade a land surveyor, so I've seen plans like this. And that's looking at the stuff that you've addressed with the yellow. You know, I haven't found anything other than, like I said, that address issue. That's the only thing I could find. And I've worked with so many developers that I got in the habit where I dig to look for those things.
Yeah. Are we interested then in, as far as our perspective, as far as colors or outside lighting, or is that, are we?
Well, that fits into the zoning.
Yes.
So there's light pollution that has to fit within the zoning parameters. Colors, I don't think so. The overall design that we don't really
Well,
worry about.
we were in a Victorian mold in Manistee, and everything had to be, I don't know if it's still that way, or,
We're not in the historic
This is outside
district,
way outside of the historic district.
so,
it's only a block off of Washington.
yeah.
It's still outside
But-
the district.
I mean, something like the Glicks, you know, old,
Although they did give it a Victorian, the design does have a Victorian flavor to it.
Well, I
as it
see.
Turned out, but I don't think we're mandated to do
Yeah,
that. by-
okay. Similar to the pictures that you gave us, I assume, right, boss? Yeah, hopefully.
Eric, could you approach the podium, please? And I know some of the questions are already in here, the answers, but just for everybody. Underground utilities, you'll have all underground utilities?
Right. I
Okay.
think there's a
power line that's gotta be relocated.
On the north side of it,
That
yep.
site there now, but yeah, it'll
Okay.
be all new utilities
Okay.
at that site.
And the turning radiuses are all set
Yeah.
from the firehouse, from the
Yeah.
fire department's public safety?
I think that was one of the comments, is we did widen the drives just so that it was better maneuverable
Okay.
through the site.
All right.
Yep.
I did notice on one of the drawings, and maybe I looked at it incorrectly, but where the disposal of garbage is, dumpsters, there was a fire hydrant by one on the, would be the
Possibly, yeah,
southeast corner.
sure,
That was very close to that.
sure. We could adjust that too.
Okay.
All right. That's it.
If anybody has anything while I fumble?
Well, I would offer from a planning perspective, not zoning, but from a planning perspective, you would want to look at circulation inside the site, how that circulation matches up with the street network around it. You'd want to look at the landscaping detail. The zoning ordinance doesn't have a lot of detail on requirements for landscaping. So you'd want to look at the landscaping and how the landscaping is interior of the site and how it relates to adjacent properties. And, you know, I would look at some of the parking areas and how it's landscaped in between the adjacent properties and the parking. So I might think about that.
Well, yeah, from what I looked at, it looked good. I mean, you're
Well,
putting shrub in. I mean, I don't know, is he gonna stand out from the neighborhood?
For Mark's question, at the plans, the proposed fire hydrants are across the drive from the dumpsters.
Okay.
They're completely across the drive.
Are they gonna keep that high elevation?
Yeah, so we're really, the concept was really to work with the elevation because, you know, it gets really expensive to start changing the grade. So you can see that the middle building is, really works with the grades where on the east side, you enter on one floor, and on the west side, you enter on a floor below. So that the large grade change can happen kind of through that that larger building on the site. And we kind of place that one in the center because we know it's a larger building, it's gonna be more dense. So then we tried to put the, you know, the smaller scale buildings, you know, on the outside, closer to the residences, just to kind of mimic that same
Right.
scale that's there. And then the circulation, you know, we looked at a lot of, I think we flipped the circulation from the original. We looked at, in planning, we looked at a lot of different circulations, but we really didn't want to create another path through the neighborhood, you know, another shortcut through from street to street. So it kind of winds its way through the site, just so that we can help ensure that it's used for the residents and not for kids running through and
Right.
trying to take a shortcut from one road to the other.
Well, you keep it winding, it slows down the traffic.
Exactly.
You know, you don't
That's
have,
really the intent. And then it slopes too, so
Yeah.
really, you know, wanting to create a
Yeah.
safe environment on that site.
Eric, I do have a question on the subsurface stormwater detention. Could you help me understand that, please?
I think just, you'll see the site is very dense, so I think just in order to manage the stormwater system, we've got to do some underground retention, which is the large kind of culverts that would be under parking lots and stuff,
Okay.
so. Because there's not much, we tried to enhance as much of the green space as we could, just, you know, for the neighborhood and for the residents. But we don't have a large area that we can do a surface stormwater drainage system.
Underground storage is quite unique. I've seen it in other projects.
It's a lot more common in urban sites where you
don't
just don't
post
have
there.
a site.
whoop, you turn.
Yeah,
We're just gonna put this up here so everybody can see the basic site plan.
sure.
Yeah, put it, am I ready?
No, you're good, Roger.
Yeah, put it out there, let them look at it.
Yeah, maybe,
Slide it towards you a little bit more, please. There you go.
Yeah, so you can see the large one in the center is the larger 3-story on the east and 4-story on the west, and then the other buildings are just 2-story buildings. And we do have a couple smaller garage buildings. And then the goal, you'll see on there are some, there are carports spread around through the site as well, just to give one carport per resident. And you can see those are the dumpster locations here. But our thought is to try to keep, you know, there's a lot of existing trees here, keep what we can down here and plant some new, just to kind of create a nice buffer down there as well.
And actually, I applaud the fact that almost all of your parking is hidden off of the
Right.
street. So
Right.
it's not like the residents are gonna be looking into large parking lots. You're really going to be looking at residential buildings,
There
and,
won't be headlights.
exactly.
The homes across
Right.
the street.
Right, yeah, all the parking is either on the east side or the west side of that, the large building. Yep.
Now, I'm assuming that you're going to be having some speed bumps kind of placed
Most likely there
through,
will be some.
because otherwise it,
Yeah, I mean, we've got some kind of
Little
connection
tested.
points. You know, we do kind of have a little bit of a common public space right here between these two buildings, and you're really trying to create, you know, a connection point to the four-story, so there'd be some kind of traffic calming here, and then the same thing, you know, across that one for that main building. Yep.
Do we have bike ramps that would?
Eric, would you point out the playground area?
Yeah, we do have a little playground area to the south of the four-story building as well. Right, and this is kind of where that grade will happen along here, so, yep.
Where do you plan to have some bike ramps for people who bike and?
I think we have bike ramps scattered around. I think we've got some located here, and I think up here. So we're trying to really get a lot of bikes. I think we have 1.5 spaces per unit for parking, I think is the ordinance, so.
Now, is there a retaining wall on, I know there's one on Short Street, but is there one on Ford?
I'd have to double check. I think we flipped, one of the reasons why we flipped the
yeah, those are
circulation was just to kind of work a little bit more naturally with the grade, so we tried to save a lot of money with the second revision. I think maybe there's a little bit of retaining, along Ford Street, but I think we were able to reduce quite a bit of it.
Well, the signage area off of, right
Yeah,
there.
there's a signage.
So
yeah,
there's a
signage
wall
here.
there, that's a
Yep.
retaining wall.
Yep.
There you go, that's a subject of ours. Should we be concerned about the type of sign?
So they did provide a sign detail to it, but as a PUD, I didn't review it if it met the sign ordinance. And I certainly can do that, maybe that was something I should have done. I will do that. I will review it if it meets the sign ordinance, but you have the ability to approve it whether it does or not.
Right,
But I will let you know, benchmark it off the standards.
Is a lit sign or just a wooden painted sign?
I think we probably have a little bit,
some,
small lights, you know, we're not gonna flood the thing, but,
Like a small,
yeah, some ground lighting or something.
Having worked on 3 of Joe's projects before myself,
Yeah,
and he's pretty reasonable following what people want to do a lot. I've worked on Horizon Point, Reach Park Apartments, and I worked on the project in Frankfurt. So Joe's pretty good to work with on stuff, on things.
Does he bring his own crew in?
what?
Does he bring his own construction crew?
No, I'm not I'd have to ask him who the construction crew is that he's got
we'd
slated.
appreciate it if you hire local.
Yeah, that's a big goal, is to hire as many local as possible.
much as
Yeah,
you can.
yeah, exactly.
What is the signage per square foot, Tamara?
That's required or that they're offering? Maybe Eric could talk to that, and while I look it up to see
Yeah,
what.
I don't know if there's a separate,
You have a
some
detail.
municipalities do have a separate.
What are you
know,
proposing, though?
application.
Don't have a width.
Yeah, there was a.
Length.
Yeah, I think it's 7 feet by, it's not showing exactly the height.
Yeah.
Probably 20 square feet.
So the ordinance,
8 square feet.
well, no, see, a ground, 16 square feet. So properties not fronting US 31 or properties with a minimum, blah, blah, blah. So,
Street though.
what is it?
Front of a key street, it's not a key street segment, isn't it?
It's not fronting on US.
31, 9th, and parcel there. Front of a key. Oh, it's not a key street segment.
No, I don't think it is. So the requirements are 16 square feet. So they're very, very close.
Yeah. we can
It's very close. So they're not asking you to yet, but they're,
Whole side is no more than 5.5 feet tall.
right?
Turn on your computer, Marlene.
I have it on.
And they could go up to 8 feet tall. So if it's 5.5 feet tall, it's well within the requirements for height. And it's just a spitting distance for square footage too, 16 versus 20.
The whole sign itself, the sign identification part of the sign only appears to be about 4 foot tall because it's 1.5 feet off the ground, and the entire structure is only 5.5 foot.
So that would bring it into 28 square feet.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is
I
the
think-
5.5 dimension here.
I thought we had
Yeah.
a 32 square foot rule.
Oh, no, yeah, there you
Yeah,
go. You don't have
so
to
that,
worry.
it sounds like it'll fit.
Not in that, yeah. He's thinking maybe like a GC.
Yeah, that's not a commercial district, though. Yeah, you're right.
Oh. Oh.
You still looking, boss, or what?
Do you have any other questions
Oh, in regard, well, for as far as the architect, no,
on the landscaping or anything? Any questions at all?
yeah, I know, I say, you know, it looks good to me.
Okay.
Marco,
right.
tell you the truth.
Pam? Marlene? Mike?
I think we're good.
Bob?
I'm looking good. I'm waiting to see
It's
the
16
building
square feet
dimensions.
right here.
I think it is.
It's this one.
Very good.
I'll plan to be back on the
16.
20th as well. If something else
We said
comes
the
up,
right
you have
one.
other questions, I'll plan to be.
How
on that
about
meeting.
there you go, time frame. Do you have any idea on a time frame?
I think
actually
our
prepared this
mission,
for
the tax credit application is due
wanted to see.
April. I think the earliest would probably be the fall, but oftentimes it might roll into either the winter or
Oh,
or the
yeah.
next spring, so.
Okay,
Yeah.
just wondering.
We'll need time to do all the full documents.
Yeah.
Construction documents and then, yeah.
All right.
so.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
May I ask Eric, so Eric, so we had a gentleman who had like 3 questions. Would you take those to the Hollander Development Corporations just so that they can be answered? That would be great.
Oh, it was the management, I think was one question.
Yeah.
Management, the entry on.
The entry,
from-
yeah, we can take a closer look at the entry and if we can tweak that so that we're not shining headlights in the houses, we can
Yeah, that's true.
adjust that.
Yeah.
And then the history of the site to ensure
sure.
that there wasn't a cemetery and the remnants of a cemetery? Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you.
Old business,
Please, not again.
it is. It's an oldie but a goodie.
Gary, get out of here, will you?
I think we'll be able to
Okay.
get them out of here.
Olga Street vacation recommendation to city council. Is this a vote?
So I've never been part of a street vacation request that this is what you had to do.
Yeah.
I've actually been able to just approve it myself. So I defer to you in what you've done in the past, but I believe it is a vote. I think someone makes a motion.
Yes.
You vote to recommend or not recommend it to city council, and then it goes to city council.
Correct.
But they have met all the requirements that you guys had put in your motion, which was this letter
With
signed by all
the
3 applicants.
Okay.
They've had their public hearing.
Settled everything.
I'll make a motion,
There-
we send it to council.
We're happy, so
Keep Gary
with
happy.
that,
I
is there a
will make
recommendation?
that we approve the vacation of the Olga Street as provided.
Okay. Motion by Mick,
Sure.
second by Bob.
There you go.
Discussion?
No discussion.
We're getting closer.
Thanks.
Please
Call
take
the
roll.
roll.
Commissioner McBride?
Yes.
Commissioner Slawinski?
Yes.
Commissioner Smansky?
Yes.
Commissioner Weiner?
Yes.
Commissioner Yoder?
Yes.
Chair Whitliff?
Yes. Approved, thank you very much. Halfway home.
Yeah, only one more step here. Yeah.
Public comments and communication. Again, I'll read it, all comments and handouts from the speaker at the podium will go through the chair. Also, there will not be any interaction between the podium and audience. Rules cannot be followed. The chair can terminate this portion of the meeting. So is there any public comments? Please approach.
Once again, Gary Neeson, 296 10th Street. I would like to say thank you. This has been a long process, 2017, it's now 2019. I'm very pleased with it, but I will tell you that I'm very disappointed on one thing, and that is that myself, I spent $550 on a survey, and I know that the tribe, Mr. Pachesny and myself spent another $800, which we will share, getting the rest of it surveyed. And I think that it's a shame that we had to spend our money to get a survey and a legal description of your property. So with that being said, on the next one, you may want to take a look at it, because I think it's unfair that you're asking us to do something that's for your property. It's not our property. Hopefully it will be soon, but it's not ours yet.
Don't get pushy. Here.
And when will it go to council?
Bring it to the
I was told that there is a form I have to fill out and submit it. So I will do that tomorrow morning, and I can certainly get back to you. I guess the answer is I don't know. I have to fill out a form, I've got to submit it.
If
They
we
have a
can-
process.
If we can get it before city council at their March 19th meeting, that's what we will do.
Yes,
If not, it'll be the first meeting in April. We will shoot for March 19th. We will let you know.
Okay,
that's good.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gary.
Okay. Anyone else? No? Okay. Correspondence, has there been any correspondence? Nothing? Okay. Staff reports?
Nothing additional than what we've spoken about.
All right. Members, anything, Raj?
No, I'm good, thank you very much. Oh, welcome aboard to our new member. I guess would be a good idea.
Pam, welcome again. Anything? Okay. Marlene?
I just want to welcome her also aboard.
Mike?
Ditto.
Bob?
Welcome aboard, and I'm looking forward to seeing the upcoming stuff for Hollander and more stuff for Tabernacle, make sure that's all going good.
Yeah?
What else the city's gonna bring us in for developments to go with.
So, look forward to the meeting on the 20th.
Yeah.
So, with that, take a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion.
Motion, second? Second. Everybody say aye.
Aye.
Adjourn. Thank you for coming.
Pending. We didn't get a paper girl here yet, eh?
An affidavit?
No, girl reports on these meetings.
I would have hoped you would have.